Thank you, David. And thank you for joining us for the Q&A session. I'll be asking David your questions. Please submit them via the Ask a Question function on the right-hand side of the video screen. I'm going to start the Q&A with a couple of pre-submitted questions. David, one of the questions we've received in advance has to do with the content of the website.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the content come from? Is it the content of the Navigator BSI content only?
The content of the Navigator as it stands right now, and as I said previously, it's a prototype, so this may change, are principally British standards, European standards and ISO international standards that BSI has published. There are, as you heard me mention before, there are links to other websites as well, such as that of DEFRA and BIS and RAP, external organisations, and we do also include some non-formal standards such as those developed by GRI, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. So there are examples of non-BS European international standards, but principally those make up the majority of content you find on the Navigator.
Thank you. And the other question I've got here from our audience has to do with the solution finder function of the Navigator. Our user says, I've run various searches using the solution finder and sometimes the results list is too long, with too many standards included on it. Are the results prioritized in any way?
Okay, well, taking that first point in terms of the actual number of standards you're getting, number of results you're getting, you heard me say beforehand about the application of the filters. So one thing I'll do, certainly, if you want to narrow down the number of results you get, then do maybe make sure and go back to what you've searched previously and look again at whether you're applying the most practical filters on there. In terms of prioritization, I mean, yes, again, there's a lot of back-end work that's gone into the Navigator to make sure that, as the example I showed previously, the results are based very much on the filters that are applied. So therefore, there's no randomization in that sense, that we have identified the most at the top of the list, the most, the best match, as it were, for the filters that have been applied by the user. So that the fewer filters that are applied, I suppose that the longer the list and the more chance you don't quite get what you expect to find. If you can use the filters, then you probably will get a match in terms of what you're looking for.
Thank you. We'll now move on to questions from our live audience, and I'd like to remind our audience once again that if you have a question, you should press the Ask a Question icon on your screen. And let's see what questions we have so far. There's one about the content of the Navigator again, but this question has to do with the number of standards that are profiled on the Navigator. The viewer is asking, what if I want to view all standards on the Navigator website? And how can I do that?
Okay, so I mentioned previously there are about 230 standards we've pulled together for the prototype of the Navigator, the version you're seeing now. So if you want to look at more standards, as I previously said in my answer, or you want to look at all of the standards, then if you were to effectively under section 2, which is about the application of the problem itself within your organisation, if you effectively leave that blank, and also the section on question 3, I think, to do with which sector, if you leave that as being other, then that will actually open up, as it were, the gates to all the results and all the standards that we've currently profiled within the Navigator. So that's the best way in which you can get everything. And there's more guidance on how to apply that search, that wider search, through the help pages on the Navigator.
And if my memory serves, there are about 230 standards and guidance material profiled on the Navigator? That's
right, yes. I mean, we initially thought to ourselves, we could throw the net wider, but we recognised this was a prototype. We wanted to make sure that we provided a functional cross-section of all the standards across the sector that we are profiling. You remember the themes I mentioned earlier on, those 8 themes, so pretty much covers all of those themes. There are other standards within those themes that we could go to, but for this version of the Navigator, we've got 230. That number will obviously go up and down because sometimes a standard will be withdrawn and obviously a new standard is added. And again, you heard me mention previously the fact that we're always tracking to see where there are key standards that we're now publishing, which therefore get added to the Navigator results, and other standards that maybe get withdrawn and therefore they need to be taken out of the database, otherwise they'll come up as a result and it's a mismatch because it's no longer the best fit, as it were.
Thank you. There's a question that's just arrived. It has to do with the availability of the Navigator. What is the annual fee for the Navigator?
The Navigator to use is free of charge, like majority of web applications. So there's no cost at all to the Navigator. And as I said, BSI is currently hosting the Navigator, and we will continue to review based very much on the usage stats and the feedback we get through Q&As such as this, and also the survey, where the Navigator goes in future. But certainly it will always remain free of charge to the user.
Thank you for that. There's an interesting question. It has to do with the use of the Navigator abroad. Is the Navigator for UK audience only? And are the standards listed on the Navigator for UK use only?
The vast majority of any standard we publish have applicability universally, globally. They're able to be used by companies of all sizes and across all sectors. There are some standards where, for example, a British standard might be developed in response to a regulatory requirement, and we work very closely with policymakers who sit on our committees helping us shape standards. So sometimes a British standard might be developed in response to UK, or it could be European regulation, legislation, and therefore there will be references within that standard to UK, European legislation, which obviously have less applicability to a market in Japan or Canada. But like I said before, that'll be very clearly indicated within the profile of the standard we host within our shop. So the vast majority of standards, and I think probably most of the ones on the Navigator right now, are globally applicable, best practice.
Thank you. One of the comments we've just received, and a question I suppose, has to do with the amount of information provided around each standard that features on the Navigator. The comment is, it would be good to have a bit more information around each standard that is listed in my search results. Is this something you can do in the future? Well,
we continue to review the information we get from users via the survey and through the sustainability@bsi group.com mailbox. I suppose this is one of those ones where you never can please all the people all the time, in the sense that if we were to put more information in the results, therefore we'd only be able to display, in the first screen worth of results, you'd have less information. So I suppose some people would find that frustrating as well. We made a call really on actually having the result shows that the numerator, as we call it, of the standard, BS ISO 1234, and then the title of the standard. That, for the most part, should give a pretty clear indication of what that standard is all about, where its applicability is most relevant. When you click on that link, you then get taken into the BSI shop. Then you'll have a much richer profile of the standard in terms of when it was published, and there'll more often than not be a couple of paragraphs of further context which will be useful. But if we'd put all that into the results screen, then I think we'd probably only be able to show 10 results per screen, and that may actually end up being less useful to most people. So we made a call on that, and hopefully we got it right.
Thank you. Just another call for our viewers. You still have a chance to submit your questions during our live Q&A session. To do that, please press the Ask a Question icon on your screens. Moving on with another question that we have just received. This seems like a bit of a technical question. The viewer is saying, the site survey popped up before I had a chance to view my search results.
Right.
This might put the user off providing meaningful feedback. How do I get around it?
Well, we are aware of that technical issue, so thank you for bringing it to our attention so publicly. But we are aware that we had the feedback already actually on that as well, and we're looking at addressing that glitch we have. So I can understand why it's somewhat of a barrier, because you don't want to provide more information before you've perhaps seen how useful the navigator is. So we're looking into that right now, and hopefully it'll be fixed very shortly.
Thank you. And another technical question. Another technical challenge that a user is dealing with. I'm having a problem using the site with Internet Explorer 8.
Okay, so when the site was published and went live, launched in May, we did it, we developed the site to really be fully optimized using a more recent version of Internet Explorer, and obviously the same applies to versions of Chrome and Firefox and Safari. So that's probably a case really of upgrading the Internet Explorer browser. Obviously you can do that through the Microsoft website. Again, with any web application, it's always a case of having to try and optimize it for the variations and versions of browsers that are most commonly used, and we made that call based on, I think it's IE 10.
Thank you, David. Perhaps we have the time for a couple of additional questions. I have one just arriving. The question is from someone who's interested in ISO and EU standardization. Can we find a summary of future work within EU and ISO within the site?
I think there will be within some of the themes, with some of the sub-themes, as I mentioned in the demonstration previously, there'll often be some examples within certain topics of where BSI, as the national standards body, is very active in terms of providing a strong UK voice into the work that's happening within, for example, the European standards body CEN or CENELEC. So those examples will be highlighted where we've identified within the sort of trends section of the theme pages that there is work that's kicked off. Often that work that's kicked off within CEN and CENELEC will be in response to work that the European Commission may have actually requested us to work with our European colleagues on. So that could be perhaps answering the question. In terms of the actual work programme that the BSI is involved in at a European and international level, again, if you go into the standards development part of our main website, not the navigator, but there's a link, I think, from the navigator through the help pages to this. But if you certainly go into a search engine and type in BSI standards development, you will find a portal which therefore allows you to search by various topic, find out where there are UK committees that BSI manages and what work they're doing and what current work's in development. So there are different ways in which you can go into that, but the navigator has a more pre-seed, I think, version of European work that we're currently providing UK input into.
Thank you. And I think we've got time for one more question only.
Okay.
And this one seems like a good one to wrap up on. When was the navigator launched? And how long has it been in existence? And what's the level of interest in it?
Okay, well, the navigator went live middle of May this year. I believe we've had about 2,000 users, and that's generated about 3,000 requests. So really it's had quite a low-level marketing so far. So, I mean, this is really the biggest push we've done. So I'm very hopeful and optimistic that this actual webinar will generate more interest in the site. But what we've found is we've been tracking, for example, the various themes that people have been using more. That's proved very useful. I said at the beginning that we were very much putting all of the 230 or so standards within those 8 themes, and what that's allowing us to do by seeing that, for example, more interest so far is in areas such as sustainable development, resource management, greenhouse gas emissions, for example, greenhouse gas management. We can see there that's where the interest is, perhaps less so in some of the other themes, perhaps like food. That's not suggesting that a later iteration of the navigator would drop that as a theme, but it may well be as a result of some of those searches and profiling where people are going, we can identify where we may want to sort of further reiterate or rather reversion that theme page, perhaps add further themes and sub-themes. So it's all part of a way in which we can track the usage of the website and make it better second time.
Thank you, David, and thank you to our live audience for the interesting questions.
Thank you very much, Maria, and if this has whet your appetite for the Navigator, please do use it, and please do tell us how you've enjoyed it, and keep in touch. Thank you for tuning in.